Israel Adesanya's bid to claim the UFC middleweight title for the third time in his career fell short on Saturday when he suffered a fourth-round submission loss to Dricus du Plessis in a highly anticipated grudge match. This fight delivered absolutely. Adesanya had his moments and was having some success at different points in the fight, but ultimately he couldn't put it together, made a mistake, allowed du Plessis to get his neck and submit him. The first submission loss of Adesanya's career, and the first time we have seen him on a two-fight losing skid. And you gotta wonder, have we seen the peak of his powers before? He did such significant preparation for this fight, bulked up, he looked way bigger than normal in there, and his physique was definitely on point. It seems like his mentality was on point, and he made no excuses for the loss. He said du Plessis is the better man, and you wonder, in light of that, is this just the end of his kind of time as a championship fighter in this division? Not to say he's fallen off in any sort of significant way, but perhaps the other fighters and the other contenders out there just getting better, and he's not able to keep that stranglehold on the division that he once had. The results show that is the case as of now, but although he took his gloves off inside the octagon, he made it very clear he has zero intention of retiring after this fight and wants to prove he can still be great in there. And I do think he still has some big fights and big victories ahead in his future if he wants them. But it's going to be tough sledding to get back to a title shot as long as du Plessis continues to win and keep that belt. I don't see a ton of grounds for a rematch the way this fight went, and I think Adesanya is going to have to look around and have a fight that is not for a championship for the first time in what would be 13 fights for him. So that would be an adjustment. Maybe it ends up being 3 rounds or something as like a co-main event, who knows? But Adesanya is now living in a different world after this fight, and he's going to have to decide whether he wants to try to make a run back towards that title or if he's just content looking for the big fights, maybe some money fights. I don't think he is interested in moving to another division, as he said post-fight. So maybe he gets his way back to a belt, but for me right now, it does feel like his career is kind of heading into a different chapter here. And there is still a lot of fun fights out there for him, some interesting matchups. If Sean Strickland does end up getting the title rematch against du Plessis next, I think he's got to look at the winner or the loser, perhaps, of that fight between Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev in October. I don't know how much interest there is in a Whittaker versus Adesanya 3 fight, especially if it's not for a title or anything, but Khamzat Chimaev would certainly be a massive deal if he's not keen to wait around to fight the du Plessis versus Strickland winner, or the UFC wants to go in there and maybe try to elevate Adesanya back into a title fight by putting him against an undefeated opponent like Chimaev, assuming he does beat Whittaker. So I think he's going to have to wait around a little bit for the division to play out. Nothing insanely clear for him outside of that fight in my mind. He's already beaten or fought pretty much all of the top guys in this weight class, so that puts him in a bit of a weird spot and makes matchmaking a little bit tricky. But I do think the Chimaev fight, whether he wins or loses against Whittaker, would be the biggest thing for him right now, and a way to prove that he is still elite. But right now, I think it's just kind of a wait and see approach, see how these fights unfold, see the timeline if the UFC does indeed book du Plessis versus Strickland 2, and then Adesanya can figure out his next move. He's got a good team behind him and good management, and certainly has a lot of star power behind his name still, despite these past 2 losses. So one, he's going to have to digest, figure out what went wrong, but I do think this is not the end of Adesanya as a winning fighter, but perhaps the end of him as a championship fighter.